What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button, and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get to it.
The term revolutionary has always been mercilessly exploited by marketers for perfectly understandable and purely mercantile purposes. And it does not matter whether we are talking about a razor with 5 blades or a ratchet with a large number of teeth in the ratchet mechanism. In the vast majority of cases, all these innovations have not affected our everyday life in any way. Bristles are scraped, nuts are tightened. But if we turn to the automobile theme, everything is different here. For example, it is worth remembering the minivans from Chrysler Corporation that saved the company in the 80s and 90s, or Audi's Quattro program from Audi, thanks to which the whole world realized that all-wheel drive is needed not only in places where even bears are afraid to go. Of course, it is difficult to put the new Corvette in line with the above examples due to its circulation, but if we look at the market of mid-engine cars with similar dynamic performance and appropriate pricing, the word revolution does not seem to be something sucked out of a finger for the sake of sales volumes. In fact, why was it necessary to so radically change the concept of the model, which has long ago gained cult status at least in the New World, has a large base of loyal fans and serves as a great hoe to plow even a small but important market niche? According to Chief Engineer Taj Judah, the first wake-up call was the 7th-generation Corvette ZR1, which, while 105 horsepower more powerful than the Z06 package, didn't offer any tangible advantage in acceleration to 60 miles per hour. Then Chevrolet was saved by Michelin tires, which allowed to transform the difference in output not in smoke from burnt tires, but in fractions of seconds of acceleration. But the design team had to think about the fact that the old approach is outdated. It was not easy to decide to create a fundamentally new platform, taking into account all costs accompanying such endeavors, especially since the last time the concern placed the power plant behind the driver's back in the 80s. And not to say that the Pontiac Fiero was commercially successful, not to mention the dismal statistics on spontaneous combustion. Glue, carbon and aluminum. It is important to understand that the task of the developers was to create a road car with reasonable usability by the standards of the class and not a track car for endurance races. And also not to forget that the price for all this pleasure had to remain at the usual level for the consumer, that is, 4 times cheaper than the minimum threshold of entry into the club of owners of new Ferrari. Part of the problem was solved by making the central tunnel one of the most important structural elements of the aluminum space frame, which allowed not to create an insurmountable obstacle out of thresholds to get inside the cabin. Moreover, the interior itself had to be moved forward by 40 centimeters without affecting the width of the door opening. Around the tunnel was built the supporting structure, which consists of only 6 basic elements cast from aluminum under high pressure. This allowed to avoid unnecessary welded joints and thus achieve 18% more rigidity compared to the previous generation, which in the base version was only 10 kilograms lighter. Not a bad result, taking into account that the last BMW M5 in the body G90 has given out on half a ton during one change of generation, and confidently overtakes the modern Dodge Ram 1500 by weight. In total, the Corvette space frame contains 20 large parts made of aluminum with a thickness of 2.5 to 3 mm, which is almost twice as thin as that of its predecessor. In addition, if the C7 used mainly welding and bolted joints, in the C8 the length of glue seams exceeded 100 meters. The technology does not shine with novelty, but General Motors has never used it in such volumes before. The beam, which is behind the rear bumper, is made of carbon fiber, and if to believe the press releases of General Motors, this is the first case in history of using such material in these elements of the design. The floor panels are also made of carbon fiber. And since the roof had to remain removable, the requirements for rigidity were very high, and the engineers coped with it perfectly. From lower shaft compressors to upper shaft turbocharged engines, the LT2 engine was designed for the base 2020 model year Corvette Stingray, which is essentially an upgraded LT1 engine that we are familiar with from the 2016 to 2024 Corvette C7 and Camaro SS. Some of the major innovations include a default dry sump lubrication system, improved exhaust and intake manifolds, and a meaner camshaft. Thanks to all these improvements, it was possible to remove from the lower shaft V8 with a volume of 6.2 liters of power up to 495 horsepower. Motors of LS family are produced since 1997 and for almost 3 decades of its existence have proved to be reliable, unpretentious, and having an impressive potential for tuning, including factory. The amount of accumulated experience, as well as the variety and access to high-performance components are without exaggeration colossal. Once you've planned a revolution, it's foolish to stop at rearranging the furniture inside the Parliament building. The bosses of General Motors thought the same way when they gave the go-ahead to launch the Gemini program, which included designing from scratch two 5.5-liter DOHC all-aluminum V8s with a flat crankshaft, LT6 and LT7. History has already seen a top-shaft Corvette. Back in the first half of the 90s, the 4th-generation ZR1 was powered by a 32-valve 5.7-liter LT5 developed in conjunction with Lotus Engineering. Motors were assembled at Mercury Marine facilities, developed quite competitive for its time 375 to 385 horsepower, and in the period from 1990 to 1995, 6,939 cars in ZR1 configuration came off the assembly line. It is important not to confuse this engine with the lower shaft LT5, which stood under the hood of the C7 ZR1. Yes, sometimes it seriously seems that the keyboard used by the concern's engineers contains only numbers and a few letters. L, S, T, Q and a couple of others. The LT6 made its first public appearance as part of the unveiling of the Z06 version in October 2021. The performance was outstanding, without any corrections, in the spirit of not bad for America. Capable of revving to 8,600 RPM, the engine produced 670 horsepower, making it the world's most powerful production atmospheric V8. And moving the M159 Mercedes-AMG creation off the pedestal, which boasted 622 horsepower from 6.2 liters. Let's get to the bottom of why. The flat crankshaft, all other things being equal, is lighter than the cruciform crankshaft, which results in greater responsiveness to gas pedal manipulation and lower losses to turn the crankshaft. Yes, we had to sacrifice the classic rumbling of old-school American small blocks due to the changed ignition order, but for those who care about sound first of all, there is no sense to overpay for innovations. There is Corvette Stingray for them. Forged pistons from aluminum alloy and no less forged titanium connecting rods also positively reflected on the torque of the engine. The huge 11-liter intake manifold is filled with air through two 87mm throttle valves. For comparison, the previous Z06 with a drive compressor was equipped with only one of similar diameter. Direct fuel injection is responsible for the second component of the fuel-air mixture. Considering that the latest experiment with camshafts in the heads and 4 valves per cylinder from General Motors is of the poor man's V8 Northstar produced by Cadillac from 1993 to 2011, the LT6 is nothing short of a resounding success. In July 2024, the public was shown the ZR1 with a 5.5-liter twin-turbo V8 producing 1,064 horsepower and a whopping 1,123 Nm of torque. Why suddenly turbos instead of the usual drive compressor, as it was on the C6 and C7? First, by tying the supercharger to the crankshaft, you lose all the advantages of a lightweight crankshaft. Secondly, turbos are more efficient, that's worth just recognizing. And thirdly, it is the mid-engine layout that allowed these turbines to be placed, as they simply could not be squeezed into the under-hood space of previous generations. Yes, there are hundreds of projects of turbocharged front-engine Corvette with much more immodest volume than 5.5 liters, but let's not forget that we are still talking about a factory road car with a 3-year warranty and prospects to live not only on the drag strip. Designers thought about turbocharged Corvette back in the days of the C5 generation, but it was possible to realize it only in the C8. The LT7 engine is not just an LT6 with a pair of snails bolted to it. Both engines were developed in parallel as part of the Gemini program. Among the main differences, it is worth noting the compression ratio reduced from 12.5 to 1 to 9.8 to 1 in the context of supercharging, due to shorter connecting rods and differently shaped pistons. The LT7 is also equipped with its own set of camshafts, a reduced volume intake manifold with a blind partition between the compartments. each responsible for its own cylinder head, as well as an additional 8 injectors mounted on the intake manifold. Thus, the LT7 is equipped with distributed and direct injection at the same time, and the fuel system includes 16 injectors. In essence, the V8 works as two inline fours. Two 76mm turbines are responsible for supercharging, which are able to pump out, if to believe advertising brochures, the volume of air, which holds an Olympic swimming pool, for 4 minutes at the maximum pressure of 1.7 bar. And the cutoff has been lowered to 8,000 RPM by adding 2 liquid intercoolers. As Jordan Lee, the company's chief motorist for V8s, recalls, initially, we planned to remove 850 horsepower to surpass the result of the C7 ZR1 by 100, which seemed quite sufficient to us. But during the tests it became clear that these figures are infinitely far from the real potential of the motor. Dodge Demon 170 could produce 1,024 horsepower on E85 fuel, 85% ethanol, 15% gasoline, and then we set ourselves a goal, 1025 kobolds on gasoline from the column. And we had to buy 2 dyno standards, because the available at our disposal could not work correctly at such power. And so was born the mightiest American V8 you could ever buy from an authorized dealer of one of the big three. LT7 engine. Photo, Corvette Forum. Com for the 7th generation Corvette, either a 7-speed manual or a classic 6 or 8-speed automatic was offered. Manual gearbox in the C8 from the list of options disappeared on all versions of the scheme. Transaxle installed robotic transmission. Tremec TR 9080 DCT with 2 clutches and a differential of increased friction. A colossal amount of work had to be done on the guts of the box to make the iron capable of holding 4-digit torque. Innovations have not left out the suspension. Thus, they refused from transverse carbon leaf springs in favor of a design with coilovers and 2 cross arms, which is used on all 4 corners. A total of 3 suspension options are available: the basic FE1, FE3 with manual adjustment, which is part of the Z51 package, which includes larger diameter brake discs, air ducts for cooling the front brakes, and a shorter main pair, as well as FE4 based on the 4th generation adaptive magnetic selective ride control system. Photo, Haggerty. Naturally, the ZR1 version of the car, which weighs over 1,600 kilograms, needed appropriate aerodynamics to match its impressive power output. The car, which during tests managed to accelerate to 233 miles per hour, 375 kilometers per hour, is capable of generating more than half a ton of downforce through a multitude of fixed aerodynamic elements. Taj Judah stated that the abandonment of active aerodynamics was a sensible and balanced decision, in the opinion of the chief engineer. All these contrivances have mainly aesthetic function, so why not make it once beautiful and functional? Both Z06 and ZR1 are 76 mm wider than the base Stingray, which is identical to the C8. A race car. In the best traditions of creating really fast road cars, the design team never for a second forgot about the viability of their ideas. Embodied in metal and plastic, and on racetracks. More than it seems, all of the above is by no means a complete list of technical solutions that make the 8th generation Corvette revolutionary by the standards of the model. Firstly, during the 5 years spent on the development of the car, Taj Judah and his companions managed to master and successfully implement a number of innovative production technologies that will be used in the creation of other models of the concern. Secondly, we received a fundamentally, if not ideologically, new line of engines, which in modern realities auto giants do not spoil fans of their products at all. Thirdly, $65,995 for a 500 horsepower mid-engine sports car, if not stuffed on high-end level, then keeping up with the time. This is the trump card, which competitors have nothing to beat. And $174,995 for honest gasoline, 1064 horses and 2.3 seconds to 60 miles per hour, this against the background of the situation in the corresponding market segment in general seems to be something beyond profitability. And, finally, fourthly, the C8 is a new chapter in the life of a legend. And we should say thanks to the designers for the fact that they had the courage to approach the work with such scope and to realize 100% of what they had planned. A vision once conceived by the father of the Corvette, whose name was Zoro Arkhistantov. What is this if not a revolution? In conclusion, the journey of the Chevrolet Corvette from its inception to its transformation into a mid-engine supercar is a testament to the power of innovation and perseverance. After 60 years of evolution, this iconic vehicle has embraced a revolutionary design that not only enhances performance but also redefines what a Corvette can be. As we look ahead, it's clear that this bold shift marks a new chapter in the Corvette legacy, blending tradition with cutting-edge technology to captivate both enthusiasts and newcomers alike. The mid-engine Corvette is not just a car, it is a symbol of progress and a thrilling glimpse into the future of American automotive excellence.